Hello, everybody, and welcome to this second session at the second day of the 21st International Conference on Quality in Education. I am pleased to welcome Professor Nuno from Portugal. You are a professor of mathematics and statistics at the University of Lisbon and president of Iniciativa Educação, a non-profit organization for fostering student qualification and member of the Conseil scientifique de l'éducation nationale of the French government. He was also Education Science Minister of Portugal from 2011 to 2015. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to participate in our conference.
Thank you very much. So should I start now?
Yes.
Very good. Well, first off, thank you very much for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here. And I'm going to talk about structured curriculum and knowledge. And my presentation is going to be a little bit different from many things that sometimes people hear. And I'm going to start by defending the role of knowledge, which seems a little bit strange nowadays because curriculum teaching is knowledge. But in a way, knowledge is under attack. And there is an argument against knowledge and in favor of competencies that goes more or less like this. There is the so-called flat tire metaphor that I don't know if in your country is very used, but in Southern Europe is very used. And it goes like this. It doesn't matter, that's the argument. If you know all the theory about a flat tire, if you are not able to change the flat tire and replace it by a new tire or just fix it. So the importance of knowledge is not really that a major thing because we should need competencies. So the idea is competence. We need competencies. Competence has an old history from Herbert Spencer in 19th century and more modernly from the business world. So people in business world say, oh, we need graduates from school to be able to do things, to fix things, and not only to memorize ideas or to have abstract knowledge. And this came to education more recently through essentially Perrineau, who is a Swiss sociologist, Glasser, and even OECD has some ideas about competencies that I disagree with, or has expressed in different documents different ideas that I disagree with. Well, the main idea about competence is that knowledge is not useful if you don't have competencies. And that means you need capabilities, you need things. And therefore, competence should be the guiding tool. Well, there are two problems with this idea. The first idea is that knowledge is useless without competence. Useless? Why is it useless? Well, there are many things that are useless in knowledge. There are many things like Greek myth, black holes, some things about galaxies. They are not immediately useful. Literature, it's not immediately useful, and we should know that. And the second problem with this idea is this therefore. Therefore, no, even if competences are necessary, they should not be the guiding tool. And this is my main point. So now there are many criticisms. The first is that the role of knowledge is diminished. The second is that the measure of students' progress is very difficult to do with competencies because mainly when we talk about generic competencies like critical thinking and so on, it's very difficult to measure students' progress. And the third is that learning makes sense even if it's not applicable. And we should contradict this idea that we should only learn applicable things. That's something very naive and very naive, firstly from students. Many of them say that, and they are not wrong. However, this idea about competencies has some advantage or has some good points. First good point is that we should pay attention to examples and applications. We should not avoid, we should not have just abstract teaching. The second is that we should avoid what the English and Americans call rote memorization. That means just memorize things without understanding them. Of course, we should memorize things, but memorize without understanding usually is not good, although there are things that we memorize without understanding. My left arm, my right arm, I'm not going to understand what right and left means, why we call those. I just memorize this is left, this is right. But in general, we have to go beyond the rote learning. And in reality, it depends on what we are talking about. Because in certain moments, applications are what is really important. For instance, suppose you finish high school and you want to be a touristic guide, well, you need to learn a few things about applications. But I'm talking about generic education. So I'm talking about primary, middle school, and secondary. Now, the problem with competence is that no one knows what you mean by competencies. Because for some people, competencies are everything. Knowledge, skills, attitudes, value. This is what OECD said in 2005. Well, and also NIH from the United States. Knowledge, skills, abilities, behavior. So competencies from this point of view are everything. And so that's why I say I give up. I give up. If competencies are everything, why are we discussing competence? Why are we talking about the competence-based curriculum, as so many times we hear? What's the purpose of it? Now, some people say, well, competencies and knowledgeable are indissociable, and I completely agree. So some people say it doesn't make sense to discuss competencies versus knowledge. So I give up. So if this is the case, I give up again. Because if this is the case, why are we discussing a competence-based curriculum? Why are we talking about this? Well, let's go back to the flat tire metaphor. And let's talk about knowledge and skills. That's the British way of saying it's not competencies, but it's knowledge and skills. And they are indissociable. I agree. But we have to understand that a school, let's think about middle school, for instance. Let's think about kids that are 12, 13, 15 years old. These kids need a structure, need understanding things about physics, about mathematics, about literature, about history. So what they need is not applied knowledge. What they need is what this sociologist, this British sociologist calls powerful knowledge. Powerful knowledge is different from everyday's knowledge. Powerful knowledge is disciplinary knowledge. I'm talking about history. I'm not talking about how to fix a flat tire. I'm talking about history. I'm talking about arts. I'm talking about literature. I'm talking about geography. These are subject-specific, conceptual, disciplinary knowledge that students need. And then they may become action competent in some way. So is power knowledge necessary? Of course it is. Of course, students, if we just think like this, should they know history? Should they know geography? Should they know what Africa is, where North Africa is, where is Europe, what South Europe, where Portugal is, where France is? Of course they should. Where the United States, so they need geography. And are they going to use this in their everyday life? Maybe not, but they need that. And so the question is this: if we agree knowledge is necessary, is how should we organize the curriculum? By skills or by knowledge? And I have no doubt it should be by knowledge. So if we organize by skills, what are we going to do about the flat tire? After the flat tire, we can teach lots of things about the flat tire, but in a non-organized way, like what's pressure, what's a gas, what's how, all these type of things, the properties of gases. But and then we switch to the beer, or where do we go? And we talk about liquids, or do we organize things? We don't organize things. We should organize things by knowledge, not by competence. And if we think a little bit about physics, for instance, we need a structure. What's a solid? What's a liquid? What's a gas? What are the properties of solids? What are the properties of liquids? Why are liquids different from solids in terms of compressibility? For instance, lots of things that we need to know. What's solubility of a gas in liquid? We need to have a structure understanding of the problems, and we should start by what is necessary. What's a force? What's work? What's a movement? What's acceleration? So these things cannot be discussed apropos different things in competence. They have their own structure. So it's important to have structured knowledge. Well, a very famous psychologist, American psychologist called David Ausubel, is widely quoted in in England, in the United States, in Southern Europe. David Ausubel has a fantastic sentence, which is this one: the most important factor influencing learning is what the learner already knows. Consider this and teach him accordingly. This is the exact sentence. But so this is very important for us. Knowledge is built upon knowledge. So we need to know this in order to know that, in order to know that. So we have to construct knowledge, building block after block in an organized way. However, even this, people have many myths. For instance, they believe that we only learn what they built. This is not correct. People can learn from different ways. What's learning is reconstructing in active mental process what is transmitted. It could be transmitted. It doesn't need to be built by the student. Discovery process is more efficient. That's what some people say. It's a myth. It's not real. It's not really. First, through discovery is almost impossible. And discovery of small facts is not efficient for learning. We can only learn from challenges. It's not true again. We can face challenges after we have some basic knowledge. Students learn best what they like. This is the myth of the myths. It's not true. People may love music and may have difficulty learning music. People can love physics in general and have difficulty learning physics because they lack mathematical knowledge. So it's not true that students learn best what they like, and this is a dangerous myth. People like what they understand and where they have success, and this needs structured teaching. Of course, I'm not saying that we should just impose things on students. We have to discuss with them. We have to try to entice them, try to make them like learning, but they can't like what they don't like, what they don't know. So this is basic facts from modern cognitive psychology, but even PISA tells us this thing. PISA, I'm talking about this inquiry, this survey for 15 years old in mathematics, in reading, and in sciences. And if we look, I'm here advertising this book. I don't gain any royalties from the book because the book is open access and you can access it. But PISA made a study on the ways of teaching in 2015 with thousands and thousands of students, and essentially they arrive at all these factors. This is a graph from PISA. You can download it directly from PISA or from the book that I just showed you. And what it shows is that, of course, the student's background is the most important factor in terms of if you have come from an affluent family, you have you have a positive edge immediately. But the second one is teacher structured teaching. That means teacher direct teaching. Direct teaching is very important. Then there are factors that are not that important. And a negative factor is inquiry-based, teaching by not teaching, just letting students discover things is a very negative fact. This here is index of inquiry-based curriculum. It's something that is negative. So I'm not saying that we should not never do it, but what I'm saying is that this is really to take into consideration. We need explicit instruction. Now, some people say, do we need explicit instruction? What about challenging problems? Of course, we should have challenging problems. Based on these PISA results, McKinsey made a study, and according to this study, they arrive at a conclusion that I think it's very interesting, is that this is what they call sweet spot. This, when we have many to all lessons being teacher directed, we should have some lectures at the same time that are directed by students in the sense that students lead their own process of inquiry. So mainly we should go for teacher directed, but we should have problems. We should have challenges for students. And why do we need too many lessons of teacher directed? Because unconnected activities lead to superficial knowledge. So everything has to be connected, and again, connected by knowledge. And we don't want them to have superficial knowledge. We want them to have as deep knowledge as possible. Then, second reason is that, second question is that structured knowledge is not opposed to active methodologies. People think, oh, we should have teach students-led discovery methods, all these type of things, project groups, flipped classrooms, because we want them to be active. No, they have to be active here, and we can have structured knowledge and at the same time have active methodologies. What we have to do is that we have to distinguish when they are novices and when they are experts. That means we have to distinguish the point where they need some basic knowledge and the point where they start by getting that specific knowledge, they can evolve and they can have some challenges. And we want that, but we want to lead them to that. And again, PISA tells us lots of things. So please, if you are interested in this, you can, of course, have to look at this book, and I would appreciate that. But main conclusion here, and I think this is a very important conclusion, is that when we want students to understand, to be able to apply knowledge, we must focus on basic knowledge. And this is the great mistake of some people that advocate competence-based curriculum, is that in order to get competencies, we need to have a knowledge-based curriculum, a knowledge-structured curriculum. I'm just suggesting, if you want to get this book, this is going to be recorded. So if you just use this QR code, you can download for free the book and you can discuss and criticize. Please do whatever is there and participate in this discussion. Now, PISA contrasts remain after the pandemic. I have here a second book that is also open access, so you can download it by using this QR code. You can download it for free. This came out of the press last month, so this is really a very new book, and it's the first book to analyze in many countries simultaneously the effects of the pandemic and what the PEARLS 2021, this is for fourth grade students in reading, and PISA 2022, and this is for 15-year-old students in math, science, and reading. And again, these two are the first two inquiry surveys to be released incorporating the pandemic losses. And what we know, what we come to the same conclusion, that some countries are doing relatively well and some countries are not doing that well. But even from those that here appear, they are the same. They are the same after the pandemic. Even from here, when you look at this, you see that some countries are doing much better than others that we consider are doing well. For instance, let's think about the United States. The United States have this here. Here have 490 points, more or less. And Singapore has 400 60 points. So we have 70 points of difference between these two countries. 70 points in PISA amounts, according to some researchers, to 2 or 3 years of schooling. That means students in Singapore are doing, are students in Singapore that are 12-year-olds are doing as well as students in the United States that are 15-year-olds. So this is a lot of difference. And so we should look at these countries. What are they doing correctly? And what they are doing correctly is very organized teaching, very organized ways of teaching, and a curriculum that is knowledge based and a curriculum that is very strict. Now, some people would say, oh, but they are not creative. They are not creative. And some people would say, oh, they are only cognitive mechanic. And we need to be more than that. We need to be critical and creative. Up to this moment, we couldn't really discuss this point with us in a scientific base with data. But now we have data. And we have data because PISA 2022 made for the first time an inquiry about the creativity of students. And what they do is they do tests on very creative tasks, such as completing a sentence in a dialogue for in a fiction story, ending the story, create your ending to the story, do a drawing to advertise a certain product, do the way you want. So these are creative things that come out of the box. And how they do out of the box, as some people say. And let's see. So what happens with the countries? And again, it's exactly the same thing. So Singapore has in math the highest results. Then see here Korea, Estonia, and so on. And also they have the highest results in terms of creativity. So creativity comes from knowledge, comes from being a good student, from understanding, from being exposed to many different things. And that's what happens here. So my conclusion is that if you want to think outside of the box, you need to have a box of knowledge. You need knowledge in order to think out of the knowledge. Portugal is also a very interesting example, and this is my country. And in Portugal, we had 2 or 3 phases, and we had specifically a phase when I was in the ministry, where we had a demanding curriculum, knowledge at the base, frequent assessment, a program to fight failure, assuming everybody can reach a reasonable level, school autonomy with results evaluated, and alternate paths, that means vocational paths. And if we look at the results of what happens with this program, everything started with curricular knowledge. And we look at the next period, the period where people start saying, oh, we don't need knowledge based, we need competence based. And this is the result that we had. So we see that up to 2015, everything was getting better. After 2016, everything is getting worse. So same thing here, we have a stability, then getting worse. Here going up, here going down. This is a graph from OECD. I didn't do this graph, and this is the trend that OECD uh, adjusted here. And so we see that when we had a knowledge-based curriculum, which was essentially since 2002 up to 2015, we were improving. When we had a competence-based curriculum, we started going down, going up, going down, going up, going down. So this is like a natural experiment. Same thing with teams. And I think this is even more telling, because here, 2011 is when we started being very clear about knowledge-based curriculum. And then we see here that we improved a lot, and then we decreased. Compare it, for instance, with Finland, which is considered in Europe one of the best countries. It's no longer one of the best countries, but it's a very good country still. The best country now is Estonia. And if we look at Finland, we see that we passed over Finland because Finland was going down, but also because of our merits. And now we are no longer above Finland after we had a competence-based curriculum. I'm not going to go into details. We have this in some of my papers where we show that this essentially hurted the low performers. So that low performers with the knowledge-based curriculum were getting fewer. So that means we were improving. So students who had really difficulties in math, in reading, and so on were few or fewer here. And the same thing here, we're reducing. And then with the competence-based curriculum, more students, and this was before the pandemic, more students with extreme difficulties. So this is the contrast between a knowledge-based curriculum and a competence-based curriculum. Unfortunately, things went for the worse in my country. Now we have a change in policy. Let's hope that things would get better and then we have a more organized curriculum again. I'm talking about this because this is a lesson we learned in Portugal, very painful lesson. And the lesson is we should have knowledge-based curriculum, strict curriculum, and get to improve our kids, get to improve situation of our education. If you want, by any reason, if you want to follow me on Twitter, or if you want to see my web page where I have many of these presentations, I'm going to post this presentation in my web page soon. If you want, you have here the QR codes. You can open them directly. And thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor CRATO, for your interesting and important presentation and advocacy in favor of knowledge-based curriculum, the importance to adopt this methodology to improve outcomes learning for students. Many viewers expect that you accept to answer a question in French.
Bien sûr, bien sûr.
Ok. Donc, merci encore pour votre excellente présentation.
Merci.
Alors, la première question est d'ordre pédagogique. Alors, si on revient à l'histoire des méthodes pédagogiques, on voit une évolution du behaviorisme jusqu'au constructivisme et après le socio-constructivisme. Et les méthodes qui ont été basées sur les compétences pour mettre en place les curriculums sont, pour la plupart, sont basées sur le socio-constructivisme. Le constructivisme. Alors que les méthodes basées sur le curriculum basé sur les connaissances se base surtout sur le behaviorisme. Alors, est-ce que ça veut dire que l'évolution qu'a connue les sciences de l'éducation doit être aujourd'hui question pour revenir aux fondamentaux? Premier penseur de la science de l'éducation, surtout Piaget, vous avez bien sûr mentionné Osborne. Est-ce que c'est la tendance actuellement dans le domaine des sciences de l'éducation?
Je m'excuse de mon pauvre français, mais je vais essayer de répondre en français. Je crois que c'est mieux pour les personnes qui nous écoutent. On doit voir ça comme une évolution. Le socioconstructivisme est très vieux. Le socioconstructivisme vient de Vygotsky, et Vygotsky est mort, je crois, en 1932, quelque chose comme ça. Alors, Vygotsky a écrit ça, ces choses sur le socioconstructivisme, euh, au début du XXe siècle. Et il était basé sur les idées dans son pays, les idées à la mode, les idées marxistes de créer un homme nouveau. Alors, bien sûr, ces idées de faire progresser les étudiants, de les pousser au maximum, sont des idées que je crois que sont positives. Les pousser à apprendre plus et plus et plus. Mais le socioconstructivisme plus moderne oublie tout ça et se réfère à Vygotsky, mais ne suit pas exactement les idées de Vygotsky. Alors, Piaget n'était pas vraiment un constructiviste. Piaget était plutôt un psychologue de l'évolution, évolutionniste. C'est deux choses différentes. Et Piaget a apporté beaucoup de choses intéressantes, mais il a apporté des choses qui, après, sont contestées. Ces idées des étapes fixes d'apprentissage et qu'on ne doit pas pousser les élèves, et c'est pour ça que Vygotsky critiquait ces idées, sont dépassées maintenant. Et on doit voir tout ça comme une évolution scientifique. Et aujourd'hui, on a au moins 4 facteurs d'évolution qui sont nouveaux. Disons, premièrement, on a PISA et toutes ces enquêtes-là, Pearls, Teams et tout ça, et on n'avait pas ça au XXe siècle. Ça a vraiment commencé à être fréquent et au un autre siècle. C'est ici que ça a commencé. Alors, ça apporte des discussions, des confrontations, la possibilité d'évaluer d'autres pays, la possibilité d'observer Estonie, d'observer Finlande, d'observer Singapour, qu'on ne savait pas le faire au XXe siècle. Alors, ça nous donne de nouvelles données. Après, on a l'économie de l'éducation, qui c'est une chose qui est peu connue, mais qui essentiellement sont des méthodes de désentangle, de séparer dans des choses sociales qui sont des choses qui sont très difficiles parce qu'on a beaucoup de facteurs, de choisir, d'étudier les facteurs d'une façon séparée, et ça nous permet beaucoup d'avance sur ce qui marche et sur ce qui ne marche pas en éducation. Troisièmement, on a la psychologie cognitive. La psychologie cognitive, c'est une chose de la fin du XXe siècle. Et même les idées bases de mémoire de travail, mémoire de long terme, attention, charge cognitive, tout ça sont des idées bases qui sont récentes. Et quand on discute aujourd'hui les choses, moi je suis plutôt cognitiviste au sens que je crois que la psychologie moderne a des apports venus des sciences cognitives et que ces sciences cognitives nous disent des choses que Piaget ne pouvait pas connaître et que Vygotsky ne pourrait pas connaître. Alors, je crois qu'il y a une évolution. Alors, il y a un problème ici, c'est que quelquefois les personnes pensent qu'une évolution, c'est toujours comme les sciences dites le mathématique. Non, l'évolution débat des choses qui avant on pensait étaient acquises et que maintenant on voit qu'ils ne sont pas vraies. Et c'est ce qui se passe avec le constructivisme. Maintenant, les sciences cognitives nous disent que c'est pas nécessaire d'être l'étudiant à construire les choses. L'important, c'est la structure mentale que l'étudiant transforme. Alors, dans un certain sens, on est tous cognitivistes, on est tous constructivistes au sens que l'étudiant fait une construction mentale. Mais on n'est pas constructiviste modernement au sens que c'est l'étudiant qui construit sa propre connaissance avec des méthodes découvertes. Les méthodes découvertes sont utiles aussi, bien sûr, mais ce sont des méthodes qui doivent être préparées par le maître d'école, par l'enseignant. Et seulement pour finir, quatrièmement, on a l'imagerie cérébrale maintenant. Par exemple, Stanislas Dehaene et ses collaborateurs ont fait des progrès extraordinaires en regardant ce qui se passe dans le cerveau de l'enfant, et ils ont montré par exemple que Piaget était complètement, il n'était pas vrai, il n'était pas correct quand il pensait que l'enfant prendrait beaucoup de temps à gagner le sens du nombre et à gagner l'abstraction. L'abstraction pratiquement naît avec l'enfant. C'est une réponse trop longue, mais j'espère qu'elle est éclairante de ce que je pense.
C'est très clair, professeur CRATO.
Si je peux, professeur, seulement terminer, dire une petite chose. Je
Oui.
crois que les personnes discutent ces choses comme constructivisme, ça veut dire activité des enfants, et non-constructivisme, ça veut dire des enfants passifs. Alors, je crois que ce que la science moderne nous montre, c'est que on doit avoir l'activité, surtout de l'activité mentale, mais qu'on ne doit pas croire que cette activité doit être seulement découverte par l'étudiant. Je m'excuse. Merci.
Peut-on parler, professeur, d'un nouveau structivisme du cerveau d'abord, par l'apprentissage, et structuration du cerveau passe par la structuration du curriculum, en prenant en considération les découvertes qu'on a aujourd'hui dans le cognitif et les neurosciences, et comment apprend l'élève, l'enfant, comment il peut suivre les leçons construites par le professeur ou l'enseignant. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, on peut mettre en place une nouvelle démarche dans les sciences de l'éducation qui prend en considération les avantages du behaviorisme et du constructivisme et aussi socioconstructivisme, et qui prennent en considération, bien sûr, les nouveautés dans les sciences cognitives, etc.
Oui, c'est une question un peu difficile, mais bien sûr, on progresse. Le plus important, c'est que on regarde les choses qu'on a en approche scientifique. Ça veut dire, en science, on ne dit pas, oh, Newton, c'était complètement faux, Einstein est correct et on va oublier Newton. Non, Newton a, a, a fait des conquêtes, a fait des progrès en science, et il y a des choses qui aujourd'hui sont pratiquement comme il les a formulées, et il y a d'autres qui ne sont pas exactement comme ça, et il y a des visions des choses qui Newton croyait figées et que Einstein a découvert qui était mouvable, qui était relatif dans le sens de la relativité. Et ça ne veut pas dire qu'Einstein disait que Newton était stupide. Non, Einstein avait un respect très grand par Newton, et Newton avait un respect très grand pour Galilée et tout ça. On le sait. Ce sont des choses qui vont être bâties une sur les autres, parfois en détruisant certaines idées figées et faire un progrès. Et je crois qu'en éducation, c'est ça ce qui se passe. Les idées constructivistes étaient fausses dans un certain sens, ou quelques étaient fausses, à mon avis, à l'avis des cognitivistes, mais ils nous ont fait attention, ils nous ont forcé à faire attention à l'activité de l'enfant, à l'activité antérieure de l'enfant, et à adopter des méthodes qui développent l'activité mentale des enfants. Alors, il y a des choses nouvelles, des choses qui il y a 100 ans, c'était impossible, le travail de groupe, et des choses comme ça, et qu'aujourd'hui, on croit que sont très importants en classe. Alors, dans cet aspect-là, je crois qu'on progresse. Mais je crois que le progrès qu'on est en train d'acquérir, c'est un progrès qui est basé sur la science et basé sur les nouvelles développements de la science. Et ça, c'est très bon.
Vous pensez qu'aujourd'hui, avec cette démarche de curriculum sur les connaissances, on peut reconstruire les disciplines scolaires d'une nouvelle manière pour essayer de s'adapter au développement, bien sûr, que se fait aujourd'hui dans le monde, mais également pour s'adapter à ces nouvelles visions et ces nouvelles, disons, paradigmes dans le domaine des sciences cognitives et d'autres sciences qui ont un lien avec l'apprentissage.
C'est très difficile de répondre en général, mais disons, en général, je dirais que non, qu'il ne faut pas repenser tout. Il faut seulement prendre plus d'attention à la structure des disciplines, les mathématiques, comment est-ce que ça commence, les nombres, les systèmes numériques, les fractions, l'algèbre, tout ça, prendre plus d'attention à la progression, parce que ça, c'est la question fondamentale de la psychologie cognitive, c'est une progression qui bâtit les connaissances sur les autres. Et ça doit être fait d'accord avec la structure des disciplines. Alors, je crois qu'il ne faut pas changer tous dans les disciplines. Il faut les moderniser ici et là, bien sûr, mais il faut surtout avoir une structure très claire dans ce que les enfants apprennent. Et, et je crois que c'est ça. Alors, il faut pas oublier les skills, les compétences, pas oublier les applications, mais avoir comme structure fondamentale les, les disciplines, la structure des disciplines. Alors, disons, ce qu'aujourd'hui est plus moderne qu'il y avait 50 ans ou quelque chose comme ça, c'est que maintenant, on prend plus d'attention aux applications, à l'activité des enfants, à l'activité que les enseignants peuvent développer chez les étudiants.
De cette question parce que beaucoup plaident pour la transdisciplinarité, l'interdisciplinarité, peut-être même la refondation des disciplines d'une autre manière. On parle par exemple du CIMQUSEF, c'est-à-dire sciences, techniques, mathématiques, ingénierie, qui peut former une discipline, au lieu de se figer dans l'architecture classique des disciplines mathématiques, lecture, géographie, etc.
Ce que je pense, c'est qu'on ne peut pas avoir des transdisciplinarités sans disciplinarité. La physique a sa logique propre. C'est comme ça que l'humanité a réussi à comprendre portions de réalité. C'est en divisant la réalité. Allons voir les choses physiques, allons voir les choses biologiques, allons voir. Bien sûr, on fait des connexions et c'est important de faire des connexions, mais on ne peut pas tout étudier en même temps. On doit étudier les bases de la physique, les bases de la biologie, les bases de la géologie, tout ça, pour être capable de bâtir ces ponts, ces connaissances transdisciplinaires. Alors, je dirais qu'il ne faut pas refondre tout et réinventer tout. Il sera déjà très bon si nos étudiants apprenaient bien les choses fondamentales.
Une dernière question, si vous voulez bien, concerne l'enseignement explicite. Vous avez parlé de l'enseignement explicite. Vous avez dit que le curriculum basé sur la connaissance doit se mettre en œuvre dans les classes par l'intermédiaire de méthodes, et ces méthodes doivent être explicites. Et ces méthodes explicites aujourd'hui, elles sont un peu partout dans le monde, mais quelques pays ont adopté cette méthode de l'enseignement explicite, qui se base sur une structuration de l'enseignement dans les classes. On revient à Jean Hattie, qui a bien sûr parlé de visible learning et par l'apprentissage visible. Et dans sa méta-analyse, il a, dans sa première version de 2009, un petit peu fait la publicité, entre parenthèses, de direct instruction, c'est-à-dire l'enseignement direct ou l'enseignement explicite. Et il est revenu en 2022 pour dire qu'il n'est pas favorable 100% à cet enseignement explicite. Comme il est pratiqué dans quelques pays, mais il parlait plutôt de principe de l'enseignement qui soit intentionné et attentionné par l'enseignant. Est-ce que vous partagez cet avis ou bien est-ce que vous êtes pour un enseignement explicite qui est dont la procédure est fixée d'avance?
C'est une question très difficile. Très difficile. Je ne connais pas bien ce que John Hattie a dit plus récemment sur ces problèmes. Bien sûr, il est très important et on doit le suivre avec attention. Mais il y a beaucoup de choses qui se réclament ou qui sont accusées d'enseignement explicite. Et il y a des méthodes qui fonctionnent très bien et des méthodes qui sont plus floues. Je crois qu'au Maroc, il y a eu des expériences avec des écoles spécifiques qui ont marché très bien avec l'enseignement explicite. Alors, il faut savoir exactement de ce qu'on parle, mais l'enseignement explicite au sens d'Engelmann et au sens de nos collègues canadiens qui ont été au Maroc, je crois que c'est une méthodologie qui fonctionne très bien et bien sûr est une méthodologie flexible. Ce qu'il faut, c'est suivre des principes fondamentaux de comment est-ce qu'on apprend. Et ça veut dire on doit être explicite, on doit diviser la réalité en petits morceaux, on doit faire attention aux charges cognitives, on doit pas avoir des détails qui sont séduisants mais qui distraient de l'importance de ce qu'on veut que les étudiants apprennent et tout ça. Et je crois que essentiellement, l'enseignement explicite, ça veut dire un enseignement bien structuré et d'accord avec la façon dont on apprend.
Il y a des études qui disent que l'enseignement explicite est plus efficace pour l'enseignement des compétences de base, mais pour enseigner des compétences hautes, entre guillemets, c'est-à-dire l'esprit critique et la résolution de problèmes, etc., il devient un petit peu inefficace.
Je ne suis pas d'accord parce que l'enseignement explicite permet d'avancer pour l'esprit critique et pour ces choses-là. Ce qui ne marche pas, ce sont des idées qui pensent qu'on peut développer l'esprit critique sans développer les connaissances de base. Je peux avoir un esprit critique très approfondi pour des choses de statistiques. Je ne dis pas que je l'ai, mais je dis je pourrais avoir parce que j'ai des connaissances statistiques. Et mon esprit critique pour la littérature ou pour la médecine est nul. Pourquoi? Parce que j'ai des connaissances statistiques et je n'ai pas des connaissances suffisantes de médecine. Alors, développer l'esprit critique en général et développer les compétences générales sans avoir des connaissances de base, je crois que c'est pas possible. Et l'enseignement explicite...
Pardon, mais je peux avoir des connaissances profondes sans avoir l'esprit critique.
Mais ça, oui, je comprends ce que vous dites. Mais ça, c'est pas... OK, mais on peut avoir des connaissances et pas avoir l'esprit critique. Mais ce sont des connaissances qui ne sont pas profondes. Ce sont des connaissances qui sont basées sur l'acceptation des choses. Bien sûr, on doit développer l'esprit critique, mais ce qu'on peut faire pour ça sans connaissance est pratiquement zéro, pratiquement rien. C'est ce que je crois. Alors, bâtir l'esprit critique, oui, d'accord, mais on top of, ça veut dire après et disons basé sur les connaissances profondes. La connaissance superficielle ne permet pas l'esprit critique parce que la connaissance superficielle apporte surtout seulement sur les premières idées, sur les premières impressions et n'est pas basée sur la structure profonde. Et la structure profonde, c'est ce qui nous permet de questionner les applications et questionner les versions qu'on a sur nous. Alors, disons, je suis tout partidaire de l'esprit critique et tout partidaire de ça, mais on doit reconnaître qu'on ne peut pas le faire sans des connaissances profondes.
Oui, comme vous l'avez dit, si bien on ne peut pas penser en dehors du cadre si on ne connaît pas le cadre, c'est-à-dire on ne connaît
Exactement.
pas.
Je crois que c'est oui, je crois que c'est ça, exactement.
Merci beaucoup, professeur Nuno CRATO, pour votre excellente présentation et pour ce débat que je pense riche et constructif. Merci beaucoup et j'espère pouvoir vous recevoir, vous accueillir au Maroc.
Je l'espère aussi. Très bien, ça a été un honneur et un privilège d'être dans ce meeting. Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Après 5 minutes, nous aurons le plaisir de recevoir et d'accueillir professeur Juliette TORABIAN, pardon, de la Suisse.
Good afternoon, Dr. Naji.
Hello, Professor TORABIAN. How are you?
Vous allez bien? Merci.
Pleased to welcome Professor Juliette TORABIAN from the University of Fribourg in Switzerland. Professor TORABIAN is journal editor for the Journal of Comparative International Higher Education, editorial board member of Sustainability and Climate Change Journal of University of Michigan. She has extensive research and management background in social and educational inequalities and has advised the governments and NGOs in their strategic planning and policy formulation to tackle inequalities. Very pleased to welcome you, Professor TORABIAN. So much for accepting our invitation to take part in our conference, international conference, the 21st CIMQUSEF.
Je vous remercie beaucoup, Dr. Naji. Thank you very much, everyone. On peut changer entre français et anglais, mais je vais présenter quand même en anglais. Après, s'il y a des questions, bien sûr, en français.
OK.
Alors, so to welcome everyone and thank you very much, Dr. Naji. I'm applauding your activities for the past years of getting everyone together to talk about the most important topics about quality of education. So thank you very much for this invitation. Today, within the framework of this conference, which is talking about Atlantic educational spaces, I am going to talk about bridging continents. You can imagine that I'm, as an academic and as a socialist and a sociologist, I'm particularly against making walls. So I'm trying to talk about a topic that is going to bridge continents to build a common future, harnessing the power of education for global citizenship and peace. Shall I move, or would you be moving the slides, Dr. Naji?
You can move your slides.
Can I? Okay. Let me see. I cannot. It seems to be shared from your side. I will stop sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me again take a look. I'm sorry about this. Okay.
If you want to, I can.
I have my presentation open here, but let me see. I'm sorry about this. There's a problem, I think, with my sharing. Would you be able to share it, Dr. Naji?
Okay, I will do it.
I don't know what happened, but it is not appearing in my windows. Now it is appearing. Let me try again. Can you see the presentation? I think it is shared. Yes. Okay, lovely. So I'll start. My apologies for this. So what I'm going to talk about today is the role of global citizenship education in Atlantic cooperation, but generally across the world. What do we mean by global citizenship? It goes actually beyond the nationalistic understandings of priorities and responsibilities for a nation, which was the previous way we would organize our national curriculum in every country. Today, because of the global challenges that we are facing around the world, including inequalities between and within countries, different types of economic and social political challenges that we are facing, environmental issues that we are facing that go beyond national borders, because you can very well imagine the pollution, for example, that is created by a factory within a country is not going to stop by the geopolitical borders that we humans have constructed. So for that, we need a new way of educating our students, and that is through global citizenship. Now, there had been some debates before I start the definition. There had been some debates about the differences and in the ways that we understand global citizenship, which is very legitimate. Of course, every culture would have its priorities and its ways of understanding, but the core of the global citizenship education remains within these 3 points that I have in bullet point here. So it is really to cultivate a sense of responsibility and interconnectedness among learners. It is to equip them with the critical skills necessary to address global challenges such as inequality, climate change, and cultural conflicts, and thereby fostering a more just and sustainable world without our learners actually being equipped with these understandings and being connected with others and really seeing why people do the things that they do and how we can actually help them revise or change or perhaps expand what they are doing. We cannot actually arrive at that just and sustainable world. Now, the global citizenship, let me again see where I have it. No, again, there's a problem, I cannot move. Dr. Naji, can you move to the next slide, please? Again, I cannot see. No, let me see. Did I change? No? Yes. Okay. Is it changing?
No, I have to show my side.
No, is it? Did I change the slide? Is it changing now? I'm on the historical context of global citizenship education. On the blue slide. Yes, I think I am changing. Yes. I see it. It is changing. Good. So, what is the historical context of global citizenship? Well, the historical evolution of global citizenship education in the Atlantic region reflects a complex tapestry of cultural exchanges, colonial legacies, of course, socio-political movements, emphasizing the necessity of understanding shared histories, understanding how we relate to one another, how we related. So I'm actually taking from the previous presentation to say that, yes, histories are actually very much important to learn in order to understand what is it that we are sharing, what is it that we did wrong, and how, as a new generation, how we can change our narrative and arrive at a better mutual responsibility and cooperation among diverse populations. Now, what is important about this is that there are certain key principles for global citizenship education and its relevance to today's, let's say, political misinformation, political issues, misinformation, and the digitalization, of course, of many platforms in education. How are we going to create this unity? Because we have been actually separating our students and learners, saying, oh, this is your responsibility, go ahead and learn whatever you want to learn, through micro-credentials, through the subject matter that you're choosing, and therefore stay in silos without being connected to others. But the key principles of global citizenship actually contradicts what we have been building till now. The first one is to have inclusivity in education. So equitable access. This has been much discussed, much researched around the world at different levels of education, from early childhood education to primary, secondary, and of course, higher education. We have been obsessed for the past 20 years, let's say, as a matter of maintaining equity among different students to ensure access to education. Now, my argument here, I do agree with this. Access, equitable access, is absolutely necessary as part of global citizenship, where we can actually dismantle the barriers that prevent particularly the most vulnerable, marginalized groups from participating in global dialogues, fostering a more inclusive global community. But it is not only giving them access. My concern with too much focus on access is that then we will say, oh, okay, so they have access and we're not going to do anything inside our education systems. Access is a first step. If it is considered as a first step, then yes, we need to we need to create equity of access, but then it is how are we going to empower our students? So this is the next thing, through critical thinking and analyzing global issues together in an effective way. And that actually goes into our curriculum. How are we bringing different viewpoints, different literature from different countries, so that we can actually discuss them in our classes and have this united understanding, or at least creating this reflective process in our students? Because if I continue, for example, with literature only from, let's say, this is just an example, if I continue with literature only from France, then what are other people saying about this same topic from other countries? Of course, when we are doing research as researchers, we go beyond our national, let's say, research outputs, and we look at other authors. But when we are in classes, and as teachers, we are providing, let's say, readings to our students. If we focus only, for example, on the American literature, on the British literature, on the French literature, then we are actually creating this lack of access to diversity of ideas for our students. While each one of our students, particularly those who are from international backgrounds, they can actually bring readings, literature from their own context, and have this fusion of ideas in our classes. Through these ways, as steps, we can actually have this scaffolding idea, which was, I think, inherent in what was discussed in the previous presentation also, that we would scaffold knowledge for our students about our common global, for example, goods, about how we can become a united, let's say, citizens in a global manner. Therefore, that would now put them into action, or get them at least closer to understanding their own role as an active citizen, but also to create opportunities for others to join them as to advocate for justice, for sustainability, and to strengthen democratic values and social cohesion. Remembering that today, according to the statistics that we have, something like 70% of the population of the world is living in a sort of authoritarian regime. So the more we actually push for global citizenship, the more we push for understanding justice for different layers of our societies, the better we can actually construct a global, harmonious, sustainable, and for justice society. Now, there are certain successful initiatives that I'm willing to share with you here today. The first one is an international initiative, of course, by UNESCO. The second one is a regional one, an African regional initiative. And the third one is a national initiative. I'm going from international to regional to national just to show you that there are very good initiatives at every level which are pushing for this global citizenship initiatives. The first one, the global learning collaboration, is actually led by UNESCO, and it has been the primary aim has been to nurture respect for all, building a sense of belonging to a common humanity, this idea of one planet, one humanity, and helping learners become responsible and active global citizens. So the global citizenship education led by UNESCO has actually been taken by many other institutions, including, for example, UNICEF, which is leading its own global citizenship education at early childhood education and primary education. Oxfam, that believes global citizenship education enables young people to develop the core competencies, which we were again talking about in the previous presentation, which allow them to actively engage with the world and to help them to be more just and more sustainable. So this is the Global Learning for Global Citizenship initiative, which you can actually refer to on the website of UNESCO. The second one is the African Peace Building Network. Now, this was launched in March 2012, if I'm not mistaken. The African Peace Building Network, or APN, it supports independent African research on conflict-affected countries and neighboring regions of the continent, as well as the integration of African knowledge into global policy communities. So it promotes the peace-building efforts and knowledge in the African continent among global and regional centers, and it is actually creating the basis of a next generation of social sciences in Africa. There are certain different parts of this network that is largely, the program activities are largely organized in Africa, and they are accomplished through cooperation with African research organizations and networks, including the African Leadership Center, based in Nairobi, Kenya, the Center for Democracy and Development, based in Abuja, Nigeria, and the Council for the Development of Social Science Research, based in Dakar, Senegal. And so it is open to scholars and practitioners from multidisciplinary backgrounds and supports the research and networking through its individual and working group grants. An interesting initiative in order to build peace, to understand peace processes better, to understand how peace, how youth can be engaged in peace building efforts, and how their impact, what are the root causes, and how we can actually promote societal harmony along the Atlantic coast. Teacher training also for GSE. This is a project called DICE, and this is an Irish teacher education at primary level. The project works to support teacher educators and student teachers. So it is really at teacher training level. And there are 4 institutions, if I'm not mistaken, that are part of this DICE effort, and they integrate global and intercultural perspectives and themes into their teaching practice. So by integrating skills, knowledge, and values of people involved in education, DICE seeks to promote global solidarity, human rights, and sustainable development, and it supports people to recognize and challenge discrimination, inequality, at local level, but also at global level. So as you can see, we have advanced and we have a very good, let's say, progression in the way that we have advanced in global citizenship. Now, what are the mutual learning opportunities across the Atlantic? There are, let's say, opportunities for collaborative educational programs and partnerships. In fact, in the global arena of research, at the level of higher education at least, what we are seeing is that collaborative programs and partnerships are becoming more and more part of student mobility, part of inclusiveness, part of exchange programs, and part of actually funding programs where we want universities across Atlantic, but also within continents in order to collaborate with one another to enhance global learning. So what does that mean? That creates a kind of a cross-cultural exchange. It creates participants to gain diverse perspectives. I can very well talk about my own project, Pioneered, if you would like to take a look at it online, Pioneered, all with capital letters, which was an EU project funded by the Horizon 2020 funding of the EU Commission. And we started in 2021 until May 2024. I had the pleasure of coordinating it with Professor Andreas Hajar from Switzerland. And we were 9 countries across Europe focusing on educational inequalities across these 9 countries at different levels, from early childhood education to higher education. What were some of the challenges at the level of policy and at the level of practice? And so when we came together, for example, for our meetings, of course, after COVID, I could myself see, for example, my Nordic partners, our Nordic partners, understand equality from a different lens compared to, for example, me from France or from Switzerland or from Luxembourg. And that actually created a harmony of our understanding, of our perceptions, and understanding, oh, there are also these possibilities. Because I'll do a small reference to quantum physics. If we talk about possibilities, these possibilities were actually brought together by all of these, let's say, atoms from different countries, 100 researchers coming together at different levels, of course, from full professors to junior researchers, to come together to discuss what is really equality in education. How do we see it from different angles? And that created this diverse perspective that developed critical thinking in each one of us, although many of us have worked on the case of inequality of education. For me, this has been like for the past 25 years in different continents, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, focusing really on inequalities of education. Nonetheless, I actually learned from this global, this was a regional, but this exchange of ideas. And therefore, I think these collaborative educational programs and partnerships, particularly if they focus on the theme of global citizenship, they can actually bring us a sense of global responsibility, which is now essential for addressing contemporary global challenges. Now, what are some of the good practices for fostering mutual learning? Well, cross-cultural engagement initiatives. I know there have been many debates about why do you say intercultural, why do you say multicultural? I know the philosophical debates, but just to say that there are different cultures, there are different values around the world, and if we create this cross understanding, then that would actually give us insights about and a learning opportunity to all of us. Of course, today with the digital platforms that we have, we can actually leverage online platforms for virtual exchanges. Sometimes they work very well. I have been on many of these platforms, either for exchange with colleagues or for teaching. Sometimes they work well because there is a very good structured curriculum and there is a very good mentoring, because when we are online, mentoring is a necessity. You can, for example, forget mentoring your students because you don't have who are on campus, because you don't have enough time, or because you have to do research to survive in the academia, or many other things, or because you are paid hourly. There are many justifications, and then limiting our mentoring. But when we are online, mentoring students is a necessity. Without that, they will not actually understand or grasp the ideas that are being discussed. So having proper educational resources that are scaffolded, so with the basic knowledge and then to further developed levels of knowledge, and then mentoring and engaging learners in a meaningful way in discussions about global citizenship would actually be very helpful. And of course, inclusive curriculum design. I cannot emphasize this enough, because our curriculum in many parts of the world is still very much national based. We give our students readings that are from this same nation. Or, for example, if it is French speaking, from French speaking world. If it is English speaking, from English speaking world. I was recently giving a keynote, for example, in Chile, Santiago, about a few weeks ago. And one of the issues, for example, that we discussed with the Quality Assurance Agency colleagues there was that, well, Chile is a country that is far away from any other country. It is on the other side of the world, and there is not really that need to learn another language, because the neighboring countries can understand one another, and we are very much far away. And that is actually creating a kind of a, let's say, restriction for collaboration with other countries, which is now becoming a very basis of quality assurance in higher education. Without these collaborations, we remain stagnant, and we need to be collaborating, whether we like it or not. I know what my French colleagues would say, but English is the language that brings more people together. So yes, using English as a medium to communicate, but nonetheless bringing the literature that is from different backgrounds in order to discuss ideas in a meaningful way. There is an impact of technology. This is inevitable with the rise of AI and ChatGPT and all the like, and of course online platforms. There is an impact of technology on this transatlantic learning, but also on global citizenship. It's good that we are connected, but there are two sides to this connectivity. On the one hand, yes, we see lots of videos, for example, from this culture, from that culture. How do they do their cuisine? How do they behave? What is it that they are doing? At the same time, we are so, let's say, separated from that reality, or we think, oh, that is something that I'm watching online and it is so far away from me and it is not going to actually affect me, that connectivity is, having both its positive and negative impacts. There is opportunity, of course, for innovation. So online platforms are new avenues for developing innovative educational programs. Particularly, for example, I can connect with my international students who can be scattered in different parts of the world, and I can give them field research. They go and they do their field research, and they bring their field research back to the online platform, and then we discuss. So nonetheless, there is a physical field research by them, which I have prepared for them, which I have given the instructions of what to do step by step. They go and they do it in their own context. They bring it together into an online platform, which was not a possibility before. So that's a good thing. Of course, weakness in accessibility sometimes, as you can imagine, there are some students who do not have a good internet, let's say, access. They do not have personal laptops. They are living in crowded houses. I'm sorry, crowded houses where they cannot actually concentrate on what they are doing, which were some of the things that we actually discovered during COVID, when everything, all educational classes went online. So yeah, am I really reaching out to all of the marginalized, vulnerable people that I want to be included in my global citizenship education? No, the answer is no, because they don't have access. So that is beyond my power or your power. And it should be actually part of social policies in our countries in order to create that accessibility. And of course, there is the threat of digital divide because of this. We have an upcoming book. I invite you to perhaps follow me on LinkedIn, and I'm going to share this in LinkedIn and also on my ResearchGate. There is a book that we wrote on the threat of digitalization and how it affects exclusion and inclusion. Because I'm just bringing your attention to this fact. We think that if we have access to internet and to a laptop, bingo, everything is done and we have a very good access. Yes, you can have access to platforms, but are you integrated? To what extent can you actually have your voice heard in a platform? To what extent can you actually be included when you have access? Because you can have access but still be excluded from certain clubs, from certain let's say categories, or from certain classes, because of, for example, let's say your lack of digital literacy skills. So we have different types of digital divide. It is not only about the internet, but it is about also your digital skills. A very common example that we give, which I do not think pays justice to seniors, but senior citizens, for example, may lack compared to the younger citizens, digital literacies in order to be included, although they have internet. Knowing that the young generation, they also have digital literacy skills shortcomings, because they work only with their cell phones. They don't work with computers. They don't work with Excel sheets, not necessarily. They don't work, for example, with Word documents. So we have different layers of digital divide. Our book is going to be about this, and we have international contributions to it. I invite you to follow me so that you can see the book being published. Now, there are challenges and opportunities, of course, in cross-cultural education. If there are, effect cross-cultural education is often hindered by linguistic differences, as I gave you the example, sometimes by cultural misunderstanding. I don't know why, but there has been this attitude of when things are said, I don't know, there is a lower tolerance perhaps. And there is this, I know why. As a sociologist, I know why, but I'm not going to go into details. These individualism that has grown into our countries, to our societies, has made us misunderstand other people's intentions. And there are all these myriad individualistic reinterpretations of what a person is saying. And if we are, for example, within a club, or within a certain, let's say, idea that is very close to our hearts and our minds, then we will immediately refuse the other one, or we will be suddenly shocked. The number of people who are now being shocked is, I think, in highly, in a very high number. But addressing these barriers can actually help us with this cross-cultural education. and of course a global citizenship. And I already talked about the integration of technology, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. So what are the future directions of this Atlantic educational collaboration within the continents and across the continents? First, we cannot deny it, whether we like it or not, digital learning integration. That can actually help us with global citizenship education. So just going beyond all of these short 1 minute videos that are on TikTok or on YouTube, really to create a community of practice, of practitioners. They already exist, but enhancing them between global citizenship education teachers, student teachers, but also amongst learners for this cultural exchange in a safe place, in a place that we know no one is going to harm the other one. No one is really going to insult the other one, but it is really for learning purposes. And be ready, minded enough to accept otherness, to accept others' ideas. There is this focus on competency development, which was very interesting because I agree with what was in the previous presentation. There is this division between skill, competencies, and knowledge. OECD has been talking more about skills compared to competencies, which we directly connect to knowledge. That I am also against. I don't think that the skills can be created without that basic knowledge and the competencies that we actually carry with ourselves. And so critical thinking, things like empathy, all of these need a cultivation of and a constant cultivation in the way we teach, in the way we discuss, and in the way we give voices to both teachers and also to students. And of course, interdisciplinary learning. Now, yes, again, I agree with the previous presentation. We need to have disciplinary learning, but if we keep on going into these silos, we will never get beyond our way of understanding of the world. Because all of you who have been in university learning, you know that when you go into a certain field, you learn the jargons of that field, you learn the language of that field, you communicate with the people who are from the same field, and you have no connection to other fields. So we create these silos, and these silos cannot make us progress as a humanity until we actually get into that interdisciplinary learning. One of my last year experiences where I was training faculty members in Korea on sustainable development and a strategic planning for their university in teaching, research, and social impact, is that before going for this workshop, I asked Dean to bring faculty members from different departments. I don't want them to only be, for example, from social studies, social science department, but from different departments. Interesting thing was that many of them discovered, oh, wow, the other one is doing this. That actually relates to my research. Why not creating a common research on, for example, global citizenship together? Because there was, for example, faculty members from the design school and from the political or from the social studies school. They can actually collaborate. That collaboration can actually help us progress in the theme on which we are focusing. There are certain policy recommendations for enhanced cooperation. Of course, that is at the level of policymaking. Strengthen educational alliances is something that is going to be a big push factor for global citizenship education. Investment in digital infrastructure so that we can actually go beyond the lack of physical and infrastructural digital divide, and of course dealing with the skills for digital literacy, and of course curriculum development for global issues. Now, the interesting thing is that one of my colleagues in Germany has done a systematic review of different education systems on the levels of education where we have global citizenship and sustainable development. It's interesting for you perhaps to know that when we are at the early childhood education or at primary education, we have too many activities about global citizenship and about sustainable development. Little by little, when we grow to the next levels of education, we have less and less. So the engagement, for example, of secondary education students goes into directed more into working with NGOs or creating exhibitions or having presentations in class. Then when we come to higher education, because of the separations between the fields, amongst the fields, almost none, except if we have this interdisciplinary units that would say, okay, at least as an elective, you will have a course on sustainable development. So that is something that we need to actually address. And of course, the role of stakeholders is very important in this global citizenship education, because there are some countries, some governments who do not like the idea of global citizenship education, or they would like to reinterpret it in the way that it would not be so much against the national curriculum in one way or another. So governmental policy has an influence on this, but of course, community engagement, which is more and more becoming part of, again, quality assurance of higher education, but also quality assurance of other levels of education, is community engagement, where we can have communities playing their role in global citizenship education by bringing, let's say, parents and students from different backgrounds together, even if it is for a weekend together. That would actually create that tolerance, that understanding, and that social justice that we are looking for through global citizenship. I will finish by this. I think despite today's populist and nationalist discourses that attempt to divide people within and across countries, we know it all. I'm not going to go through the examples. Cultural diversity is actually a unique strength that can benefit all humanity. For this, we first need to understand what is culture, away from its capitalist or authoritarian definition, or that culture is something that we can never change, and then decide how it can be connected and more powerful as a humanity in our diversity. I think that is the message of global citizenship education. And I know that there are very good examples that I didn't actually bring into my presentation, but they are, of course, available online if you're interested. Thank you very much for your patience, and I'm ready for your questions. Dr. Naji, you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Juliette TORABIAN, for your excellent presentation, for the relevant areas that you addressed in your presentation. We can ask you many questions about your presentation, but we will focus in 2 or 3 questions in French, if you want.
Oui, allez-y.
Malheureusement, le temps qui nous reste il ne reste pas beaucoup de temps. C'est pourquoi je vais me contenter de peut-être 2 questions. La première question, c'est en relation avec votre conclusion sur la diversité culturelle. Alors, est-ce que aujourd'hui, nous sommes pas de renforcer la diversité culturelle et les initiatives par le monde, par les organisations qui ont en charge la question de la diversité culturelle et pays qui gouvernent aujourd'hui dans le monde, est-ce qu'ils ont la volonté d'assurer sa diversité culturelle ou bien, au contraire, ils cherchent à standardiser la culture mondiale?
Je ne veux pas être politiquement correcte et je vais dire ce que je pense vraiment. Non, je ne pense pas qu'il y a cet effort global, au niveau global, pour cette éducation de citoyenneté globale, mondiale. Alors, oui, il y a toujours cette dispute politique entre les pays et cette question de pouvoir, qui va être le premier, par exemple, pays dans le monde, qui va gérer tout, qui va être la culture référence. Et donc, malheureusement, oui, il y a c'est pour ça que je viens de insister sur la politique des gouvernements, mais aussi le rôle des institutions mondiales comme l'UNESCO, où nous avons besoin vraiment intégrer cette idée de diversité culturelle qui va nous bénéficier tous, alors qu'aujourd'hui, on a cette discours populiste, nationaliste, qui est en train de nous diviser davantage. Et je pense que c'est absolument nécessaire d'avoir cette initiative de la part de nous-mêmes, comme enseignants, comme éducateurs, et ensuite, peut-être, créer cet facteur de motivation parmi nos étudiants, parce que vous le savez bien comme enseignant, ce que nous enseignons peut être contagieux. On peut motiver nos étudiants, ce que je fais dans mes cours aussi, et pour les motiver, pour comprendre que cette diversité, c'est un atout. C'est pas quelque chose qui va nous éloigner de notre culture à nous. C'est pas quelque chose qui va nous débarrasser de tout ce que nos ancêtres avaient construit. Donc, oui, malheureusement, il n'y a pas, on a cette division que je ne suis pas du tout d'accord avec Global North, Global South. Et ça, là, maintenant, on a on cherche des équilibres entre ces deux parties du monde qui a été créée par des histoires de l'humanité, par l'histoire de colonisation, bien sûr, mais nous avons besoin de comprendre que cette diversité, c'est un atout. Et de comprendre du monde en utilisant des perspectives différentes va nous aider. Et donc, voilà, je ne veux pas continuer sur ça. Je pense que j'ai répondu.
Merci. Une dernière question. Il nous reste seulement 2 minutes. Une dernière question concernant la paix. L'éducation à la paix, bien sûr, lorsqu'on parle de l'éducation à la citoyenneté mondiale, le pilier le plus important, c'est l'éducation à la paix. Mais est-ce que l'éducation peut se faire sans suivre l'exemple? Et l'exemple, aujourd'hui, c'est celui qui est donné par les politiques, les politiciens. Aujourd'hui, lorsqu'on trouve un État, on le nomme, qui perpétue un génocide dans le pays, Palestine et le Liban, avec l'appui et le soutien de ce monde occidental, est-ce qu'on peut parler de la paix avec les enfants?
Alors, rien ne nous empêche de parler de la paix. Je comprends d'où vous venez, d'où votre argument, je comprends fort bien, parce qu'il y a beaucoup des arguments au contraire de la paix sur les réseaux sociaux, à la télé, les politiciens, oui, bien sûr. Et il y a tout contre nous comme éducateurs, bien sûr. Et c'est pas vraiment possible que nous changeons le monde dans nos classes. Ça, je comprends bien. Parce que moi, je suis aussi en face des étudiants. Il y a parfois cette intensité de négativité entre eux que moi, comme éducateur, je ne peux pas vraiment créer cette situation où je peux parler de la paix et pourquoi c'est important. N'empêche que je continue petit à petit pour parler de l'importance de la paix, parce que sans
30 secondes pour conclure.
Oui, sans la paix,
30 secondes.
nous ne pouvons pas avoir d'autres choses. Sans la paix, dans les situations de la guerre, normalement, on ne peut pas continuer à vivre normalement. Et donc, je pense qu'il faut continuer d'une façon ou d'autre.
Merci beaucoup.